Welcome to the Experience Economy podcast, everybody. My name is Bryce Ebling. This is where we talk to brand and marketing experts about the massive transition that we're seeing in the marketplace, moving from product and service companies to more of an experience economy. Everything from technology, machine learning, IoT connected devices, hyper personalization. These are all elements that are changing the way that we communicate and create value for our customers, right? So our goal is to talk through these really provocative challenges with our guests, find out from them what they think companies need to do to answer this challenge and what they're doing personally, either in their own companies, in their industry, to engage in becoming an experience provider rather than service or product businesses. Today, I'm really excited because I get to introduce Patrick Stewart, a very unique guest. He's the CEO of Apricot Lane Boutique. And you've really had an interesting path into the leadership of an 80 plus unit franchise company. Most presidents, CEOs, in fact, C-suite to be in general of franchise companies, they grew up in franchising. You know, they've lived, they've breathed, they've bled franchising for decades. Instead, you know, you come from what franchisors would often call the corporate world. Companies like Sears Holdings, where you were CMO, Crazy Shirts, which was a Hawaiian apparel, a lifestyle brand, a footwear retailer. I believe it was called the Walking Company. And you know what I find interesting, even more than all of that, is that as a marketer, because I believe all of these were a marketing role in one way or another, you've had a really long tenure in every brand you've led, and that is so unique. It doesn't happen very often. A CMO lasts a year typically. You know, every role you've had up until now, and I'll ask, I'd like to delve into this a little bit as well, but every role you've had up until now, you control that brand. And, you know, it's a big leap into franchising, where you don't necessarily have control. You have leadership responsibilities, right? But you don't necessarily have control. And, you know, that's something I'd like to, is some very interesting content, I think, that can be gleaned from here. So, Patrick, I want to welcome you to the Experience Economy podcast. Did I miss anything or did I say anything wrong?
No, that's all great. Thanks for inviting me on. And my background has been with a lot of different brands. And if you're the head of marketing, you know, don't control everything. You might control the brand, but you don't control the experience.
Yeah.
That is left up to the individuals. And that hasn't changed. That's still like when we're in our business, what we do, and we totally encourage all listeners to explore franchising, whether it's with us or with someone else, because the big benefit to me, and I want everyone to know it, is the big benefit to being part of a franchise is you're supposed to have a proven business model so that it can be financially successful, which kind of makes it fun because a giant burden of, is this thing going to be successful, is lifted. You can own your own business by reducing a lot of the risk. You just need to pick the business that you think would be the most fun for you.
Right.
So for me and my team, the people we speak to are women that have had this dream of owning their own boutique for usually a long time, like more than 5 years, some 10 years, some 20. We've got some people that have wanted to own their own business for 30 years, maybe came from something hugely successful, maybe came from something that was soul destroying. Either way, they've had this dream that they put on hold for a long time. They put it on hold because they probably never looked into franchising. They thought, oh, I want to own my own boutique, but they've seen boutiques come and go, which is how most retail is. Most retail is not that exciting. Most.
Right. Yep.
And everyone out there will have some brands that they like, and there'll be 100 more that they don't.
Yep. 100%.
And that's the way a lot of businesses are. There are some that are successful, most aren't. That's a good enough reason to steer away from it, with this big exception. Look into franchises. Any franchise that you know has been around probably for a good long time because the business works, the model works. That's why there's so many Starbucks out there.
Yep.
Their business model works and can be replicated in many locations, and please a lot of customers. We're not in the same business as them, clearly, but I wanted to use that as an example because Not many people have heard of Emily's Ultimate Coffee Boutiquerie. I just made that name up, but
I was going to say I haven't heard of that one either. That sounds pretty cool.
but I've said that one maybe is not proven and might fail because they serve too many rhubarb flavored cupcakes in
Right.
their coffee shop. It's like, why did you do that? She's like, well, it had a rhubarb garden. Uh,
You certainly are a great ambassador of franchising for sure. I mean, I've been in franchising, I think, probably for more than 20 years at this point. I worked for two fairly large franchisors. I was a franchisee myself. In one of my companies, we're a supplier on the in the franchising side. And the thing that I find most interesting, and it really depends on the brand, but I break franchising up into really three categories. There's franchisees that will always do about 30, and it's almost 30, 30, 30, give or take. And every brand's a little different, but 30% are going to do exactly what the franchisor tells them to. 30% are going to mostly do what the franchisor says, but they're going to go at their own because they know a little bit more than the franchisor does. And that tends to sometimes work in their favor because they're localizing things for themselves.
mm-hmm.
And then there's that last 30, and that last 30, they're the ones that always know better than the franchisor. And it always makes me wonder why in the world they themselves decided if they know better and they want to go out and make a lot of mistakes, some, mistakes that they basically invested in. Someone else made the mistakes before them, but they want to invest in all of those mistakes that have already been made so they don't have to make them. They want to go make them themselves. It fascinates me to some extent in a soul, I don't know the right word, a soul gripping way of why, just go do it yourself then. But
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think probably all franchisors see it, and the shame of it is if the proven model, which is like follow like at least 90% of what we have because
right.
it works.
Yeah.
And when you try to do something on your own, it's extremely risky. And if you would have asked, we could have told you, oh, there's definitely been 10 other people that tried that. It already has failed numerous times. It's not, I mean, so I think that probably out of curiosity, uh, and there's an entrepreneurial spirit in almost anyone that joins a franchise. So
Yep.
that's to be admired.
Yes.
But it doesn't always need to be nurtured and fed with let me experiment, thinking that it's never been tried before. That's why I'm trying to do this. But it might have been tried before numerous times and failed, and you could have saved yourself the failure if you were at least open enough to ask. I think maybe what you get into is a situation where the franchisee feels like asking is going to get a no, so they don't want to ask. They'd rather just experiment, and then it fails. Um, and in the world of apparel, in our situation, might be someone just loves dogs, and they're like, for sure, the vendor came by and showed them the cutest little knitted outfits for poodles, and they're like, well, I'm going to carve out a space because I'm sure it's going to work, or at least I want to gamble and see if it's going to work. And I can say, it's been tried before. Heads up, it won't work. You're going to be stuck with that inventory for a long time. You could have asked me, and I would have told you it's been tried.
Yeah.
But they thought, no, you're just going to tell me I can't sell poodle merchandise inside my boutique, so I won't ask. I'll just experiment. Anyway, no matter what franchise you're a part of, know that the business model, that's what you're really wanting, as a business model that has proven, so that you get to be successful. And you should lean on your franchise and your franchisor as much as you can to drive the business results that you want. We encourage that. And
Yeah.
it's not putting out the franchisor to help you drive the financial result, mostly because that's going to make the business more fun for you as the owner. It's going to trickle over to your team that you have. They're going to have more fun working there. Your customers are going to have more fun shopping with you if the business is working. If it's not, then a lot of the fun is being missed, and that's an unfortunate thing to be avoided.
Yeah, I entirely agree. I mean, I think the top franchisees, the ones that are typically following 95% of the model, deviating 5%, they're the ones typically that at least that I've seen. They're the ones innovating the brand. Not that they're innovating themselves, but they're working with the franchisor to say, what if?
Yeah.
And a lot of the what ifs that they bring to the table are things that haven't been tried before. Or if they have, there's a new twist to it that could enhance. And oh, well, you know what? A failure for a top performing franchisee or a top 20% franchisee is not catastrophic typically. So for them, that when they do follow the model and they do help the franchisor to innovate, that benefits everybody downstream, because those that can take the financial risk, and maybe it's not necessarily just financial, could be reputation, could be whatever, but they're willing to take that risk, and the franchisors with them in that risk that they're taking. When it pays off, now it becomes a part of the actual brand and the brand experience that is propagated, and no one else has to take that risk, especially if they're not following the system. That just kills me. So I know Apricot Lane Boutique. Do you guys use boutique in the name, or is it Apricot Lane for the most part?
Well, I do,
Okay.
but it
Well, I
rolls
mean,
off the tongue.
is the
Apricot Lane
actual name,
probably.
is the name Apricot Lane Boutique, or is it
Yeah.
Apricot Lane that is a boutique? I guess
Apricot
is my
Lane Boutique is the trade name. It's on
okay.
it's on the logo. The word boutique is a little bit smaller, so I think that most customers probably refer to it as Apricot Lane, and owners, we give freedom to say. I mean, I don't mandate that people say apricot or apricot. There's both ways, and whichever way.
I honestly didn't even think of that one.
It's like, where do you live? I don't mind which way you say it.
It's like Boise is what I
We
grew up.
see. Yeah.
Yes, I grew up saying Boise, and then we moved here about 2 years ago, and boy, was I schooled on, no, it's not Boise, it's Boise. And the way that you say the name of the city, we moved outside of Boise. But
Yeah, I grew up saying Boise too, but I realized that the locals, they're like, no, there's a C in there for a
Boise.
reason.
It took me about 6 months before it was, ingrained where I wouldn't say Boise. I mean Boise, but now it's Boise, and I love it. It's amazing.
Well, there's the TV show Boise Boys.
I
That's
did not.
not.
I've never seen that.
Oh, it's
Are you
great.
making that one up now too? Just
No,
like
I would make it up, but I'm not. No, it's a good show. As far as the many shows out there of people that are into renovation, remodels, and then resells, those type of shows, it's one of them, and it is really good.
interesting. I will
But
have to take. I'll take a look at
those Boise boys, I'm sure that they pronounce it Boise, but they're like, look, no one says Boise.
that. No one says Boise outside of Boise.
So the producers of the television show said, you got to give us this one.
That's funny. So, if I'm not mistaken, you opened your 85th location either last week or this week.
I think
Or is it
that
next
I think that it's going to be 85 Thursday.
Okay.
So Duxbury, Massachusetts, where our 85th opens.
Apricot Lane Boutique has a really unique offering for I imagine it's primarily women ownership, would be my guess. I mean, maybe with their spouse, but primarily women are wanting to own this. And this is really a two-part question. First, I want to understand, tell me more about Apricot Lane Boutique, number one. And then second, as a part of that, this is kind of a two-part question. What problem are you as the franchisor solving? We've talked about it a little bit, so you can explain as much in detail as you want or not. But what problem are your franchisees solving?
Yeah, fair question. I'd say the problem that I'm helping to solve, we talked a little bit about my background with all these different retailers, and I said that, everyone has a few favorite brands, places that they prefer to shop, and then there's many more that they don't like to go to. So I call it sameness in retail, or it's I guess more easily understood by saying boring retail, where, and we just talked about, I have 85 locations, right?
Yeah.
The interesting thing is none of the 85 are identical. So you could be a fan of an Apricot Lane Boutique, and part of what would make you a fan of it is each one would be familiar, but very different from the type of things that they carry, and the owner is going to be different. It's going to feel like a local independent boutique. the familiarity. So you're going to be pleased, you're going to like it, but it's going to be slightly different. It's very different than going into a Starbucks where they want to replicate the experience and they want it to be exactly the same over and over and over again. That's because the type of business that they're in, anyone in the food business, the customer expects the exact same cheeseburger at McDonald's. They
Right.
don't want it to be different. They're going to be disappointed if it's slightly different. The fashion world, the only thing the customer really wants from someone supplying fashion is delight me with the latest and greatest. I want the experience of discovery and newness. That's what I want. I don't want the exact same dress. I've already got it. It must be different. It must be super exciting to discover. It's got to make me feel good, got to make me look good, but it cannot be the exact same garment. And
If I could, real quick, that's actually really interesting because in franchising, the thing and company owned locations, right? The thing that is one of the most, what's the word I'm looking for? One of the most sought after business elements. Now, this could be true or could not be true, and you might just tell me I'm full of you know what. But it's economy of scale, and the economy of scale comes with purchasing power. I would imagine, especially in fashion and apparel. So if the franchisees typically aren't, or the franchisees are unique in the in that they carry similar but not the same things. And if this borders on your intellectual property, you can please don't answer this. How do you help franchisees manage and contain costs then with regard to economy of scale in the purchasing power?
well, I can give general stuff.
Sure.
It's not so secret. I like telling everyone, please try to copy us.
Okay. Fair enough.
Please try. No other business is really free to do it. And it's because each one of our, like if you are a big chain, if you are Macy's, that's a big company. If you are Zara, if you are H&M, your method of business is to buy in these gigantic, big quantities.
Right.
Ours is exactly the opposite. We want our individual owners to buy in very small quantities, which reduces their risk of exposure of maybe I'm wrong, maybe customers are not going to like this.
Okay.
So they purposely buy small with the idea of I want to sell out quickly because that makes customers feel good about their purchase if it was what they wanted. It's not going to be seen by everyone else. Everyone else isn't going to have this in their closet. The owner purposely made it so that the quantity was small. The quantity available to purchase is small. And you really got the treasure hunt that is enjoyable shopping. You didn't find a treasure that's been sitting around buried. It came, it was brand new, and I got it, and then it was gone. And we teach owners that it's not bad to sell out.
Scarcity.
It's good to sell out.
So
And don't think that the thing that we want you to do is replenish that supply again. We don't. We want you to move on to the next thing.
Interesting thing that you just said about that. It made me think of, and you mentioned H&M, you mentioned Macy's. It almost to some extent sounds like as a member of Costco. If you see something on a Costco shelf that you think you might like, you better pick it up now because it's probably not there next week or next month, whatever. Whenever they run out, they run out. And it's almost the idea of scarcity that would continue to bring people back to Apricot Lane, and also drives that uniqueness, I would imagine, between stores as well. Because and I'll pretend this is the case, and you can tell me I'm wrong here too, which is fine. um, your franchisees are still ordering from the same suppliers, ordering their quantity, but when that quantity runs out, they're not replenishing it. So what the churn of the churn is happening differently at different stores, which is why they're different,
Mm-hmm.
even though they are across 80 or 85, quote unquote, the same. Is that the concept essentially?
It's very different. The inventory that you'll get is different from location to location. They do have, but the reason that it can be different is because we connect our owners with more than 70 different vendors to purchase from. And when you have 70 different places to buy from, we have more. We have 70 popular, and because we buy frequently, uh, the inventory turns a lot for an individual owner. But if you imagine those vendors, they get a lot of new supplies, a new product all the time. That's why we choose them. We wouldn't want to say, here's a vendor to purchase things from. They land new product once every 3 months.
Right.
If you had someone like that, let's say you had that, you would say, okay, I'm going to get it when they first, during that period when they have new product. But now I'm not coming back to you anymore because you don't have enough newness to support me and my customers. My customers crave newness. That's really what they want. And you hit it square on the head by saying the customer would want to visit you more and more often if they knew that there was always going to be this small quantity that I needed to see and I needed to buy while I could because it was going to sell out. So I visit frequently. It's exactly the business model,
Interesting.
which is you're giving customers what they want. They want to see newness, and they want to, and small quantities. It's little treasures that can be purchased then, but they can't be purchased next week because they're gone.
Right.
And if you are a woman that enjoys shopping for newness, um, that's why Apricot Lane is their favorite place to shop. It's also a small boutique. It's not a really huge, let me walk around for a long time to try to discover something. It's a small-ish, very cozy, very, very local feeling, uh, which is a great shopping experience. You don't have to commit a lot of time. If you can walk into a small place and immediately find things that are fun, interesting, exciting, and know that, guess what? In a week, they won't be here. It'll be different.
Right.
That's a great place to make part of your regular habit, especially if you live a short distance away from it. And so when we say local, the boutique itself is owned locally and it's shopped locally.
So
So
when I would imagine at that point, your traditional or typical trade radius is probably a 1 to 3 mile.
yeah, maybe
I mean, you might have more, but I mean, you're really looking at a 1 to 3 mile trade radius for your 80% of your clients or 80% of your revenue.
yeah, that in most places is enough so that a lot of people that might be listening might be like, would that be enough business to have a successful business? And the answer is, in most places, yes. You could live somewhere very rural where it's like, okay, now I need to expand. It needs to be within a 10-mile radius. But in most places, the answer is yes. That if you're number one in that area, it's probably plenty to be very successful. And you really get to know your locals. They get to know you. I mean, first name basis type of thing, where you're seeing them frequently. That's probably, as a business owner, the most rewarding kind of business that you can have is really starting to know your customers and making them regulars.
Right. Interesting dynamic here. Went a whole different direction than I thought it would from a franchising concept perspective. You're breaking all the franchising rules, and I love it. So I want to change topics a little bit. So as we move forward, what I want to do is I want to think of when we refer to customers, I prefer to think of stakeholders. I'm not really a big fan of that word, but when with regard to customer experience or experience economy, Really, there's a lot of different stakeholders that exist within a business. We have our retail consumers. Obviously, without them, no one's in business, right? We have our franchisees, but franchisees have their staff. We have you have your corporate staff, you have your franchisees, the franchisee staff, and you have your executives. So, and then obviously your shareholders. So there's various stakeholders, various elements that are have sometimes competing dynamics with regard to um, what it is they're looking for. But so the primary objective with experience economy is looking at it from a retail consumer perspective. But if there's another dynamic here that deserves exploration, feel free to include that with a different kind of stakeholder. Just make sure we address which stakeholder that is.
I think there's two key, like the customer. Yes, they're super important, but to us, the owner is, and the team,
Right.
because they all rely on each other for the experience. I don't think you could have really happy customers and satisfied customers that are getting the real joy out of the experience if they came in contact with either owner or, let's say, one of the people that the owner hired as part of their team. They're going to be interfacing with them. They should be. And the better that is, then the more rewarding it is for all people. So the customer wants that great interaction, and the person on the team wants the customer interaction to be excellent too. If you take away either of those, then that just means that there's an opportunity to improve. So, and when you have those things really working great, everybody walks away feeling like, boy, my day is better for that. They might remember that really great exchange for the entire day, could be a whole lot longer, and take it away, and something was missing, and that means there's a better place to go. And for us, there's a better place to shop if you didn't supply that. But if it was a restaurant that you went to, that the waitress or whoever you engaged with before eating wasn't quite right, there's a better place to go.
Right.
And if you went to a place, let's say you went to a bistro and you just hit it off with whoever sat you at the table, the you might walk away from that. I mean, you might, if it was good enough, saying, I don't even care if the food's good. That was just so much fun. And then if
I've
the food's good on
Yeah,
top of it,
yeah.
fantastic.
I've had experiences like that for sure.
Yeah.
So before I prejudice you with my with what my vision of experience of the experience economy is, when I say customer experience, customer journey, um, describe what that means to you.
To me, it starts with not the journey starts with, I didn't know that this business was here. I had no idea. And so the journey starts with discovery. And after so then first you have to have either the luck or you create your luck by making sure that that discovery happens. And a good franchisor hopefully has some good marketing experience and can make it so you're going to have this nucleus of a grand opening with a whole lot of people who are discovering you for the first time centered around this opening time period. So you have to have enough customers to start off right. It gets the cash flow going in the business. So the discovery of your business, the existence of it, is the beginning part of that relationship. And that's going to continue on, hopefully, for the entire, let's say you're in business for 10 years. You still want to be feeding that business with people that are just discovering you for the first time. Meanwhile, you're going to have people that discovered you 10 years ago
Right.
that have become your total regulars. So their experience is like, yeah, I remember like 10 years ago not knowing who you were, and then I discovered you. After the discovery process from that beginning portion, then there needs to be what was the discovery like? Usually discovery is digital. It doesn't have to be. It could be I was just walking by, I was a walk-in, there's that. In many cases, though, it can be a discovery that was digital. I saw you on social media, looked at your let's say, Instagram feed looked pretty cool, found out you're only a couple miles away, decided to give you a visit. And then the relationship starts with, I need to have a good interface, great experience. I didn't have to buy from you that first time. Maybe I decided to drop back in, but I could have bought, then came back in, and it keeps growing. But again, it starts with discovery, a desire to explore, and then actually doing that. The reason I paint that picture that way is because if you don't think that way, then it could instead be this way. Hey, there's some customer for us that loves fashion, lives 1 mile away, never knew we were here. Always drove this other street,
Yeah.
never knew we were here, never talked to a friend that shopped with us. And wouldn't that be a shame to have missed out on that business? So the answer is, yeah, it's a huge shame to miss out on that business. How do you prevent that? And the answer, there's a long answer, but what that means is there are many ways to not allow that to happen. And you should be using all of those ways to make sure that that doesn't happen. You want to be certain that everybody within a certain radius is completely aware of you, that because that is how you really thrive in your businesses, is a desire to be, for every local shopper, we want to be their favorite place to shop, and then achieve that goal. And lean on your, in our case, lean on your franchisor to tell you, here's exactly what works, so that you don't miss out on all the opportunity that's out there. And that should be kind of the rule with any franchise that you want to be a part of, where your franchisor should allow you to thrive and win all the available business, and tell you the easiest path to get there.
What are what are the excuse me? What are the expectations that stakeholders have of a store, of a boutique? Excuse me.
What are the expectations that the owners have?
Could be the owner. Could be a customer. Could be you at the corporate office. What you expect of a boutique. So you can take this any way you want. I'm just curious, as a stakeholder, what are the expectations of a boutique?
Hmm. Awesome question. I'll tell you my expectations are very simple. My expectation is that a store is extremely likely to fail, go out of business, go bankrupt. A boutique is very likely to be the favorite place to shop for locals.
Okay.
So that is a distinct difference between being a store owner and a boutique owner. Now let's break down the whys, and please explain more. A store is a transaction-based business, meaning they offer to customers things to buy in exchange for money, where a boutique is, it's not a transaction-based, it's an experience-based business. And there's going to be a money exchanging, but it's not going to be, here's product A and you will pay it, and you could choose the same product from any other places because the same product exists. Um, so in and that's a big difference. Is we're still in a boutique, there still is product, there just happens to be a lot more. And to get your head around what I think this really means to people is kind of explaining it in the food business, where McDonald's sells food, it is consumed, but then you have a really great restaurant that's your favorite restaurant. It still sells food, but it's probably something special that's on the menu. The chef had a bit of creativity. It just got on the menu, and it's only going to be here this week. And it's the chef's special, and it was a handwritten menu, and it felt like it was, and the quality was better, and it was a surprise. It's delight. And if you were a regular there, a lot of the other regulars that might choose to be there. You know a lot of the team that's there. You might know the chef. You might know the owner. There's all these other things compared to McDonald's where you're like, these are hourly workers and they don't care about this thing at all. This is just a job to them. You do not know the owner. Um, it's part of a corporation. And you know that both are in the food business, but they're very different from each other. And so that's there was for me from a store boutique. So the shopper's expectation, they might not articulate it that way, but if you ask them to explain what they like about a boutique, it'd be as
They'll talk about that experience.
they'll talk about the
They just won't.
experience.
They won't name it, but that's what they'll. That's the descriptor that they'll get
Yeah.
through.
So to the boutique shopper, to people that like shopping boutiques, it is a strong preference for they have no desire to go to a store. They want the boutique experience because it's far better for them. And then from an Apricot Lane boutique standpoint, one of the things that might make our boutiques very different from others are it happens to be that our prices are very affordable, which is different than a lot of boutiques. If you went to many boutiques, like you went to Carmel by the Sea in California, a top there is going to be $300. And a person who went into that boutique, and that was the first boutique that they've shopped, they said, you know why I don't go to boutiques? They're like, that was great until I saw the prices.
Right.
So they have turned off on boutiques because they had sticker shock. And it might be many years before they then give another boutique a try because they've been so discouraged by the prices are just out of their reach. The super nice thing about our boutiques are no such sticker shock. It
I noticed.
is,
I
yeah.
noticed that when I was there are some of your franchisees that have a website. So I went to some of the franchisees' websites. It did look like most. I, there wasn't any rhyme or reason as far as franchisees that had a website and don't. So I'd be interested in your thoughts on some franchisees having them, some not. Obviously, if I'm just guessing, everything we've talked about already is the uniqueness of that individual location, right? If there's something different, feel free to impart your wisdom on that. But I did notice that the boutique prices for sundress and things like that was just astronomically low. I mean, I've never seen a boutique have a sundress in the $40 range. It just doesn't exist. Which was one of the reasons I asked the question about economy of scale, because you're still getting some sort of economy of scale, or those other boutiques are just charging because they can. Uh,
Yeah, so it's great to know that the prices are very reasonable. The quality is super high. So that's a tremendous mix for the shopper to know that, well, I can get this boutique experience, but I'm not going to break the bank by, well, of course. And for them, that's, like, wow, I haven't experienced that before where I can get reasonably priced things, great quality, and the boutique experience. And so it's one of the things that's contributed to our success uh, by making it so that if you're going to come into business with us and follow the model, you're going to be successful financially, and that's going to make it very fun for you as the owner. It's going to make it fun for your team. Your customers are going to win, and it's allowed us to grow as a company. And it's not the only thing, but it's certainly a part of it. Um, so
Franchising. Oh, before I go there, why is it that, unless that was the answer, why is it that some franchisees have online ordering and others don't?
I
Is
didn't
it a
answer that. Sorry, I missed that. The answer is I, as the CEO of the company, don't encourage. I allow it. If someone really wants to say, "Hey, I want to have an online," we will set you up. We're the ones that are going to set up the tech side of it so that you are going to be fully capable of offering that. The reason that I don't encourage it is I'll explain it to you this way, and this is the way I would explain it to any franchisee that was interested. I'm saying you're you're having the customer miss out on the great boutique experience by making that transaction that could be inside the boutique. You're making it online. And so if you wanted to have a really excellent experience, let's say that we'll use that restaurant example again, your favorite place,
Yeah.
right? What if I said, hey, we're going to make it a to go order? I'm like, well, you can. You're still going to get the food, but you missed out on everything else. You missed
Right.
out on saying hi to the other locals, the experience, the sit down, the ambiance, the service aspect, the freshness of it, all of the things that contribute to the great experience. You miss as soon as you make an online purchase with clothing. So you you got the purchase. I mean,
Right.
that happened. The transaction did happen. You will get the product that happened, but all of the great experience was missed. And so who misses out? And to me, the customer is the one who is missing out the most. Right. And I just think that that is not the best business to be in. Where for the business owner, if you aren't having that relationship develop with customers, you're putting energy into it, and you might get some profit out of it. It's good for that. It's good for that. So then they hear that, and most of our owners then say, "I got it. I understand," and they steer away from it. So we have less than 10% of our owners have decided to have an online experience as well. They're going to be digitally available to everyone. So we set everyone up with feeds and a website so that they can see all the new product, everything that they have, they can see it, but it's just not added to a cart and make the transaction. Just because they've understood it's going to be a lesser experience for the customer.
So the distinction that you're and maybe I just didn't see uh, go to one of the websites, local websites that said online ordering. The distinction is the ability to complete a cart or not complete a cart, not necessarily see the current inventory.
Yeah, because every one of our locations we set up so that you can see their product, and you're going to. So I want everyone to have a digital presence, and that
Right.
means a working website. Every one of our owners is set up with one of those. Set up with an Instagram account, a Facebook account, YouTube. They're going to be, and they can be on Pinterest. They can be on TikTok. We want a good digital presence so that a customer that has their mobile device clearly is going to know that I'm just a click away from this boutique that I love. Let's see what's happening. And there's this 24/7 uh, connective relationship that they have, which is tremendous. But I think that for many customers, they like to be told, "Oh, I could buy online, but I choose not to." So,
Right.
but if you allowed that to happen, if you allowed those to go orders, you're just missing the sit down and really, we want the customer to take the time to have the experience with us. It's not just about let me have this top.
The and this is a guy speaking,
Yeah,
definitely not your target audience. It almost seems like a happy medium there from a consumer perspective is I can see the for me as a consumer, again, not your target demographic. For me as a consumer, it would seem that it is beneficial to know what new things are coming into the store where I don't necessarily have to come into the store to see that those new things. That said, um, I think as a consumer, I still want that experience of coming into the store. But if there was a way in which to put things on hold, hey, hold one for me, I'll be and it's a 24-hour hold or something, it almost seems like that is a great medium between I know what's there, I can see the new stuff coming in. More importantly, I can put something on hold, and you're still maintaining that level of I don't know the right word, so I'm just going to call it its goneness, immediacy of
well, that's
your
true. That's true. But what would be missed then is, that what that would be is all the good stuff was given to or was sold to was taken by the customer who just spent more time on their computer, and the person who
Potentially.
and
Yeah,
the person
potentially.
who and the person who popped by to chat it up with the owner and you know uh, just walk around, browse, try to build a whole outfit. That person who's really developing the relationship
Right.
was like, "Where's the new stuff?" Oh, this person who was online and paid attention, took it first. I don't think that that's the best for the overall business. When you really take everything into consideration, it is you're going to have a better time as the customer coming in and making part of kind of your life experience, getting to know your local businesses, and um, that's whether they're a person who shops at boutique or any other local business. When you support locally and when you get out there and just have the human relationship with people in your community, that's a better community. That's where you'd want to live. Is a place where you get to know all the other people. And that's the type of place where you really are going to have a better overall life.
Franchising is interesting because it poses really unique challenges from a management perspective. Getting stakeholder buy-in is not like when you were at Sears or the Walking Company or whatever. You have a corporate staff, you have your executive team, you have franchisees, you have franchise advisory councils, you have franchisee staff. And having a vision is one thing. Having buy into that vision is one level of difficulty, but having a vision that is bought in at so many different levels of stakeholders is why so many franchisors, and this is good and bad, right? There's two sides to this coin, don't innovate their brand as much as they could. Now, sometimes those innovations, like we've already talked about, have already been done before, right? So, like I said, there's good and bad to this. Um, Considering all the levels of intricacy involved with getting an idea from the idea stage to implementation, what is your experience between a corporate role where you have control of that brand um, and a franchise, and in the franchise world where you have responsibility for leadership of this, but it's not necessarily pushing it downstream as easy as it was to push that brand downstream in a corporate. I say corporate; they're both corporate, but I mean, I'm trying to draw a distinction here.
What's the experience of the two? How are
Yeah,
they different?
yeah.
Uh,
You're one of very few people I can ask this question of, so I got to
hmm.
ask it.
um, yeah. Well, to me, the bigger a company is, I'm definitely not a fan of really big companies because they take so long to implement change.
Okay.
Even if it seems like a small change, it takes a long time. And even if you are CEO of the company, it doesn't mean that that change can, if it's that big. If you and where I like to use the uh, example is is if you have a company that's like doing more than $1 billion in revenue, and I said the CEO wants to make this change. How long do you think it will take? It could take years. One simple change just is nearly impossible to get made. And I guess a good example would be uh, for our listeners today. This is hot news. If you're listening to this podcast a month from now, it's going to be totally different. But especially if it's 3 months from now, it'll be really dated. So Twitter, big company,
Yep.
uh, and Elon Musk is currently as of this announcement, 9.1% of the company owned, and was invited to sit on the board of directors and turned it down yesterday so that, and this is where we'll see how right I am, so that he's free to make much more than a 15% purchase, which if he sat on the board, that's how much he would own. Right. If he chooses to invest another $50 billion in Twitter, then he will become like a 51% shareholder. And as soon as he has majority, he can make whatever changes he wants. Okay, that said, if he did, how long would it take him to make the exact changes that he wants? And the answer is you're going to be able to see that, watch that unfold. And my prediction is, even though it'll make a whole lot of news, it won't be changed overnight, even though he's invested billions in it. It will take time for the changes to really be reflected in the culture of the company. I mean, even small things. It doesn't happen quickly just because of the size and scale of the company, and that is a pure digital company. If you then take it over to a brick and mortar company that's in the $1 billion size, the CEO is glacially slow in seeing vision actually materialized. But the nice thing is with smaller companies, franchises, smaller companies, changes can happen much more rapidly. And so I, as CEO, can implement changes that can happen very quickly because we're 85 locations, so that's fairly small. Even as a franchisor that are individually owned, I can implement rules that get put in place very quickly. I do a lot of testing, and I get volunteers all the time to participate in tests. So I can say I want to do a test, and I need at least 10 owners to participate in this test with me, and I can get volunteers that very day, and we can roll out a test in a matter of a week. We can have the results as fast as we want to, and I might say, look, I don't believe test results that don't get at least a full month to be able to measure the results, and then we share them, and we can either make it, hey, here's a new thing, we wanted to share with you these results. Anyone can continue to operate business this way, or we can make it a kind of a rule that folks have to follow. But it's much better to say, we did this test. It's much better to say, we did this test. Here's the financial results. Whoever wants to follow this can. And then you share continuously the results of those that are trying it, and other people then come on board, not because they're forced to, but because it is getting a better result.
Right.
And so we can do those things and roll things out in a structured way and have it done in a matter of, say, 3 months, where a much, much bigger company has had this on their wish list for years. So that's the big benefit of smaller companies, period. And from a franchise standpoint, you heard me say, I like to do it on a voluntary basis, and it's because the business is smarter that way. So it's very much let me allow you to have access to the information you want. The results are better. Do it if you want to. And if you choose not to, it's probably not going to break your business, but very few things from a business standpoint really break the business. It's usually an accumulation of several bad decisions need to be made before you're really in a dire strait, that can also be offset by several really good decisions. So you've got a mix. Hopefully that answers the question.
That was a very, very interesting, because I would have expected, at least on from a messaging perspective. Obviously, there are elements of what you just said from a corporate side that I would have 100% agreed with. But there was an element to it that really made me think, wow, I guess I have thought about that wrong. Just in your example of Musk was spot on. I think there are changes that could happen immediately, but I'd be interested to see if he did and I don't know if it's really another 50, well, I guess it'd be close to it. It'd probably be 30 to 40 billion. If he did decide to make that investment in a 51% stake, um, it would be interesting to see if he upends their business model as he has suggested of making things open, basically transparent and open
Yeah,
on.
open source. He might decide to make it so that the algorithm is visible to everyone. But imagine him thinking, like, hey, let's change the algorithm so that X occurs.
Right.
That is,
It requires a
I
lot. It
yeah.
requires dynamics that are outside of his control with staff that may or may not implement. But
No, I
100%.
mean, it could change, and it doesn't. And changing the algorithm, like you should think, how often does the algorithm change to get a desired result? That is a lot of test and learn,
Right.
and he's going to have to be patient. The reason I know that it takes a long time even with tech is because separately he's working on autonomous driving with Tesla. I mean, he would have loved to have had it all figured out 3 years ago.
Yep.
It takes time for in that case it's for liability reasons, and I was talking about as a general rule.
Right.
The bigger things are, the slower the good changes
Yep.
are to really come to fruition.
I can't disagree with that. What role? So we've talked about customer experience. You've talked about what a desired experience looks like. What role does technology play in this process, considering you guys are so hands-on, personal, and I will use this word in the most I don't know how it's going to sound, but in the best of intentions,
Yeah,
boutique-ish.
yeah. Tech is important. I want to say critical. I don't want to scare people away from saying, oh, if I got into business, I'm going to have to become tech savvy. No, that's not what it means. It is crucial, and you're going to fail if you don't have good tech in the business.
Okay.
Good thing is, if you've got a proven franchise model and the tech has been figured out, you can follow that and know that the backbone of that, since it's critical to the business and you're going to fail without it, has been figured out. That's our situation too, but it's critical, and I'll kind of explain why. Uh, in our world of constant new product flowing in, flowing out, wanting to just understand that that's what the customer wants. That's why it's so critical. They want this new product to be purchased only in micro quantities so that it can sell out and they can come back in more frequently. You would need tech to understand the product that is really working, and manage it appropriately so that you're always buying the right new stuff. It's not that, hey, I was at Starbucks and I ran out of the venti size cup and I need to have more of those. That's easy tech to figure out. In our business, if I need to get the newest fashion, I would want to know it was this particular vendor that I purchased from that really seems to rock the world of my customers. That would be an insight that you would want.
Got it.
Now, let's say that vendor has dresses and bottoms, and it was the dresses that sold, and the bottoms were terrible. That would be an insight that you would want. And let's also say that, hey, this vendor has a price range that starts at $100 and goes down to $40. And it was all of the product that was between 100 and 80 that really sold well. For some reason, the stuff between 80 and 50 was terrible, and 50 to 40 was really good too. If you knew that, that would help you in buying future, not knowing what the hot item was going to be, but that would be really great to know.
Interesting.
That's just from the product standpoint
Right.
of how tech is going to help you. Wouldn't it be great to also know that within this 5-mile radius from your boutique, wouldn't it be great to know that 70% of the sales that you make come from the customers from the north side of
Right.
business surrounding you. And from the South, that was it was like less than 30%. Wouldn't that be great to know? Would it be great to know that this is an easier one to know? And you might think you could memorize this and know it, but wouldn't it be great to know that over half of your business was on Friday and Saturday, and the other half was from all those other days of the week? Wouldn't that be great? The reason that
Yeah.
might be great for you to know and have,
Save on staffing.
yeah, from staffing standpoint, you'd want to staff up. Wouldn't it be great to know which of your team was the most productive in selling? Let's say this person always had average units per transaction 4, and this other one was 2. But would it be very insightful to know that even the person who was 2 items per transaction had a bigger transaction? Their total transaction was 120. The person who was 4 was 100. And if you have access to the information, that's one thing. It's great. You want the access to it. Where a franchisor might be able to help you as a business owner is to say, here's what to do with that information. Here's how to create better overall results within your team using that information. Here's how to better staff during those days of the week to elevate your sales even higher. Here's how to advertise better within that group that responds so well. Here's how to get more from that other group that seems to not be. So having the data is part of it. Knowing what to do with it is the other thing to drive the better business outcome. But so the going back to the answer, that tech is super important to your business.
Right.
Knowing what to do with the tech is how you're really going to thrive.
Right. So this is the fun part for me of this. My personal definition of customer experience, customer journey is about the real versus or the real or perceived interaction that a customer has or should have from their perspective with a brand, not the company's. So when I say perception versus reality, how could this, and if you want me to give an example, I will, but how could you envision this distinction affecting your design of a customer experience or your understanding of the experience you currently deliver?
Give me one example.
Perfect example. Think of pizza delivery.
Okay.
You've stayed with food, so I'll stay with food. In pizza delivery, one of the biggest challenges that someone like a Domino's has is when someone calls up, they place an order, and they're given an estimated time of arrival for that food. And let's say that it's half an hour. Doesn't matter what the time frame is, but it shows up at an hour and a half. Well, typically what happens, now the customer might call and complain, talk to the manager. Let's leave those exceptions out. When that delivery driver shows up, they're going to apologize for being late, and that customer is now really miffed. That is reality, right? The perception is 2 days later, 3 days later, that customer's continuing to fester because it took so long to get my pizza. Now, it might be in the back of their mind, but when someone brings up pizza again, now it's festering that, oh my gosh, I'm not ordering from this place again because it took so long. Whereas the perception could be changed using technology, for instance, you've talked about it, where it's almost impossible in the POS systems that exist for pizza, for instance, in most POS systems, to identify anomalies. This customer got this pizza 30 minutes late, 40 minutes late, whatever. But if you could identify that, and instead of identifying it, no one has to go search reports, a manager gets a notification that says, hey, call this customer because of this particular reason. There is a perceived need by the customer to receive that interaction that they didn't otherwise know that they wanted, or they didn't otherwise know that was possible. But it changes their understanding of that brand instantly because of that proactive outreach that is virtually impossible to, for a POS typically. You got to do it some other way. It's virtually impossible for that POS to identify that one single transaction because its job is to get product in, get product out, and exchange money, not understand operationally how things could have been better. That's my job as an operator, right? So when I think of real versus perceived, my real interaction in that particular instance is my pizza showed up 45 minutes late. The perceived interaction that should have happened is no one called me to apologize except the delivery driver who gave me the required apology because he's given me pizza in exchange for money.
Yeah. I don't know that I have any really great examples, but when you're telling the story, I'll share this portion of it, which is I wouldn't want anybody at an Apricot Lane boutique from an owner standpoint or from a customer standpoint to get too bogged down, even in the thought process of tech. I'd rather have it be that tech is just a tool to make it so easy for you to develop a better boutique experience. We talked a little bit about what that boutique experience is and should be from what the customer expects and what you want to deliver. So from a tech standpoint, it shouldn't go a whole lot further than this so that every owner, potential owner out there really understands what I'm talking about. Here it is. I like to tell owners that one of the most important things that you're going to be doing in business with us, one of the most important and most valuable from a return on investment standpoint, is to host in-store special events every month for as long as you're in business. And I say the reason why is because you need to close your store, close your boutique doors off its locked doors to everyone else except VIPs that get invited to this wonderful event that you're going to be hosting. Could be a sip and shop where there's champagne and there's shopping, and there's only 12 people that got invited, and they're your VIPs. And we'll help you. We have a full calendar so that you don't have to think about how am I going to do these things every month, and we show you how to do them. But the reason to do them is, yes, you're going to make a lot of money, but that's not the reason that you're doing them. That's a byproduct of the reason. The reason is because you want your VIPs to feel the love. You are going to get to know your best shoppers, your best customers. That's who gets invited to these, and they're going to get to know you on a first name basis, and you are going to deepen that relationship with them. They already were your best. That's why they got invited. But now they're your best for life. And they're going to become your best brand ambassadors. They're going to go out and tell friends about you. They're going to talk you up as your favorite place because you created an experience for them that was more memorable than what they already had. Right. And they don't get invited to VIP events that are at other places, even if they're really great customers. They don't host events like this, but you should, and you should do it every month. Now, the tech side, where does that fit into this? It's like, okay, you're going to have tech that's set up inside your store, POS, which stands for point of sale, guys. So
I should have said that. Most of our listeners would know that, but yes, thank you for that.
Yeah, so it's the point of sale captured the transaction. It's like, oh, I had let's say your average transaction was $100, and you got this one that's $200. You as the owner want to say, ooh, I want to invite that person to the next event. Well, guess what? If you as the owner allowed that $200 transaction to just be made, and then they walked away and the items are bagfuls of stuff and it was great, but you forgot to get their mobile phone number or you forgot to get their email address, you do not now have the ability to invite them to your next event. So the tech that you want to know as the owner is, I need my point of sale to be able to capture that phone number so that I can text them or capture the email or both easily, because I'm actually going to use that to invite them. Because if you don't have that technology and you didn't know to use it, the event that you wanted to host doesn't have anyone to invite. Or it might, but they're not the right folks, because the person who just walked away just now with this wonderful transaction that you loved so much and you want to show them your love and appreciation the most meaningful way that you can, which isn't just to say, thank you for shopping. I really love the fact that you came here, but it's to invite them to this wonderful event to prove that you love them. So tech, that's the extent. So I would like any any owner that we have, any potential owner, think of it that way. That's the tool so that you can develop a better relationship with that customer. If it does that, it's a useful tool to you. That's the tech that you want. And really, any tech that you should have should be with that in mind. It's going to create a better business outcome for me, yes. And the how is by making customers love me more. And in-store events will do that. There's many other things, but if it does that, then you understand that's what tech is supposed to do. It's supposed to have a really good purpose. It's very understandable. And it makes it easy on me so that I didn't have to break out a piece of paper and go, "Ooh, let me get your mobile," and then I lose that note. So tech should be a fantastic tool that works for you in a very understandable way. So I think that's a good understanding of how I'd want tech to be thought of.
Well, we have. Thank you for that. We have covered a lot of material today. Is there anything, Patrick, that you'd like to share? Any questions that you have that you'd like to pose to us here at the Experience Economy Podcast before we wrap up?
Well, I won't be able to get the answers to your questions. So instead, I'll say, hey, guys, if you want to reach out, if you know someone that loves fashion, if they don't, there's probably a better franchise for them. And encourage them to look out for franchises there. They can be really good so that you can own your own business and be assured of success instead of taking this giant risk of I'm going to do all the learning on my own. Here's the example that I'll say what a franchise is. A franchise is if you were going to go on a road trip from Niagara Falls to the Golden Gate Bridge, you're going to go clear across state. And I said, do without a map. You can figure it out. That's going into business for yourself. You might be able to get there. You might be able to get there in a decent amount of time. But if you want to make it really easy on yourself, you should use Apple Maps, Google Maps, Siri. Use one of those great Garmin systems. Use some tech. That's proven map is what a franchise offers you. Is it's going to avoid traffic for me. It's going to make it so I never miss an exit. It's far, far easier. So that's what a franchise can offer you is a proven model, and you can have your own business. And for almost anyone that's listening to this podcast, if you don't already own your own business, you should. Or maybe you're retired and you've got kids that are graduating college or they've been doing something else and you've heard what they've said about where they work. Encourage them to look into it. It's really about as rewarding as you can get. It's time well spent looking into it, and then the rest of your time as an owner is very rewarding. This is me telling you what I hear again and again from our owners. They really love it, and most of them say they waited too long to start looking into it. So that's tremendous. If you want to look into us specifically because you know someone that likes fashion, apricotlanefranchise.com is where you'll be able to learn more about us. And then if you got questions for me, you can ask me personally.
That is awesome. Thank you very much, Patrick.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So that about wraps up the Experience Economy Podcast for today. Patrick, I can't thank you enough taking time to share your experience, impart the wisdom that you have from two truly different industries. And I'm not talking about fashion and apparel, just the true corporate world, if you will, and franchising, because we don't get, there aren't that many individuals with that background. It's one or the other. And, I just can't thank you enough. So from the Experience Economy Podcast, I'm Bryce Ebling. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks again, Bryce.